Hi there, my name's Ben Rudder and I want to be a director someday. In the meantime, though, uh, some people may have noticed that we are in something of a pandemic globally right now. So I originally set out to make a movie and become better as a director by coordinating actors and doing basically everything myself on the budget of the Richter funding. I spent the money on things like a shoulder rig, which is not with me right now, things like a nice microphone, which I do have with me right now. It's going gray, like me, because of all the stress of, a global pandemic. I originally wrote a script for the movie, had actors lined up, all of which, were learning lines and stuff like that. Let me get this phone out of the thing, out of the shot. And everything was going pretty well. The script, it was named Self-Made Man, and it was about, um, 25 pages long, with a cast of like 8 primary actors, with an extended cast of about 30 people, including extras. It was pretty exciting, and then Knox College, and it was going to be like pretty Knox-centric, and then everybody had to go home. So then I scaled it back a bit and wrote another script, which had about 8 primary people, which again, still couldn't get that many people and also probably wouldn't be socially responsible. So then I scaled it back to 3 people, and that also just wasn't going to work because people want to social distance. And so I decided to make video essays on YouTube because they're all the rage right now. Everybody wants to get good at video essays, and there's something that actually you can monetize pretty well and can lead into better and more professional jobs in video editing and sound design, in a lot of the jobs in, I guess, like Hollywood that are writing out this pandemic thing pretty well, because there'll always be a need for people to work behind the scenes, right? And you're probably going to have a little bit more job security than the people just holding the microphone above the actors on a movie set. So I figured I could spin this whole situation into getting good at editing, sound design, among other things, and someday be able to materialize the scripts that I had written, um, all of which were of varying length. 2 of them are shorter movies. One of them is a feature-length movie. So what I've done is I've made a video. I've learned a lot of things, which is the best part. Um, Specifically, that everything that I've learned prior in video and sound editing takes twice as long when the software is twice as good. There's infinitely more options, which is a good thing, and also kind of a bad thing because you're sifting through stuff, and then you have the issue of choice because you want to make it as good as humanly possible, but also you're still learning. And I'm still learning a lot. I like movies, like anyone. I like movies. Making them's a lot harder than watching them. Thank you guys at the Richter, and also in the Vovis Center for this microphone. This came in handy the most because in the video essay, you don't see my face. So I just talk into the microphone, and then I edit that sound later.
The worst crime I think that filmmakers can make is to make a boring picture. If it's boring, then it's all over. The audience, you've failed in entertaining them.
In a long career full of hits, I wouldn't refute director Sam Raimi's ability to craft a compelling movie. Like it or not, his films succeed financially and are very watchable, as with his contemporaries and frequent collaborators, the Coen brothers, who stick to the idea of quality over quantity. His filmography has few to no missteps beyond the individual taste of the viewer and what they want to see. And odds are, he's made a movie you enjoyed in his journey across genre. Raimi's claim to fame is the only existing Spider-Man trilogy, so far, that kicked off the financial viability of the entire superhero genre. How did he make such a successful movie in a world where the only heroes that had something resembling a franchise were Batman and Superman, he did it by making a horror movie. Hey, if it worked for Tim Burton's Batman, it should work with Marvel's polar opposite of The Dark Knight, right? While Sam Raimi didn't sell Spider-Man as such, Raimi has his roots in sensational horror comedy and revealed his rules of horror in an interview with Stephen King back in 1989, 2 years after directing his horror comedy classic Evil Dead 2.
One of the things that we learned from our repeated visits to the horror picture were certain laws that happen to apply to all horror pictures. And that is, the innocent must suffer. The poor sap who walks into the house has to be tormented. And then the next law came into, we came to realize there was a second law governing all horror pictures, and that was the guilty must be punished. Whatever evil thing there is out there, whatever dark force there is, the audience wants to see the hero lay into it pretty intensely. And then we found there was a third law, and that is that you must taste blood to be a man. You've got to go through this, in these horror films, this coming of age through this blood experience.
Raimi employs these rules in Darkman, made in 1990. Not only is this an early superhero flick and Liam Neeson's first major action role, it's an original story that uses some of the major horror concepts of the superhero genre, specifically the transformation from regular to extraordinary as a side effect of mad science, and how one uses their newfound powers. After all, everybody loves the story of the learning curve. Darkman is rated R, though, because the character goes insane and wears people's faces to cover his own grotesque burns with the purpose of seeking revenge. But again, this is a time when Batman is the biggest name in movie heroes. And after all, the character of Peter Parker / Spider-Man faces all of Raimi's rules of horror within his first movie. It's gross, it's campy, it's even got some blatant horror set design. This is why Spider-Man 2002 is a horror movie. Part 1. The Innocent Must Suffer. Peter Parker is notorious for being the character most like the nerds that read comics. Compared to his contemporaries, he has all of the brains but none of the style, at least not until he puts on the mask. But we really do have two leads in this movie, Spider-Man and the Green Goblin, hero and villain, both altered by science, and both innocent before their respective DNA transformations. Spider-Man in the comics has been anti-science historically, with many of the iconic villains made the way they are because of technology or progress. Sandman is made into sand by scientists. Electro gets turned into electricity from working on a power line and being struck by lightning. Vulture is a mad scientist, just like the Lizard, just like Doc Ock, just like the Green Goblin. Horror is the best way to convey the concept that the ramifications are never worth the price that you pay for progress, and at the end of the day, only one's morals can save them from the technology advancement that put their lives at risk. Raimi's Spider-Man spins this concept even better than in other iterations, because in the fight of good versus bad, Peter Parker doesn't even have to invent these web shooters. He doesn't even have to be smart. It all just comes to him because he's the moral hero. In fact, he never comes close to crossing into mad scientist territory, and this gives Raimi some incredible opportunities for gross-out horror when Peter Parker gets his powers. More on that later. Part 2. The Guilty Must Be Punished. Spider-Man, despite not being evil, really does punish some guilty people over the course of his intro movie. At the beginning of his learning curve, he takes on Flash Thompson, fighting the bigger guy with his new powers, and punishing him after entering Flash Time. After doing the mandatory beating of the bully that happens time and time again in the Spider-Man stories, Peter Parker only really learns, with great power comes great responsibility, after going full horror movie villain and torturing the guy who killed Uncle Ben from the shadows before accidentally pushing this guy to his death. And this works both ways. Norman Osborn becomes evil out of a necessity to please his shareholders, and later when he's forced out by the guilty board anyway, he completely snaps and kills them with a badass skeleton grenade. That's some horrible stuff right there. It also officially makes him the Green Goblin, and once he starts his crusade of trying to have Spider-Man join him on his path of evil, the Green Goblin only really learns his lesson, and full-on stabs himself in the stomach with his glider. He's evil, he's punished. Part 3. You must taste blood to be a man. Spider-Man isn't the manliest spider until his mask is torn away at the end of the movie so we can see Tobey Maguire freely emote as he does at the end of every Spider-Man movie. Bloody and bruised, but ultimately victorious. Despite this, I believe that Raimi means gross, horrible things need to happen to the protagonist, and in true horror movie form, these moments happen throughout the entire movie. And this is the fun part. The coolest thing about Spider-Man when I was a kid was how Spider-Man's webs came right out of his wrist in Raimi's world. I actually thought it was canon in the comics, but nope, something compelled Sam Raimi to make the fluid biological in his version. And yes, it's played for laughs in the cafeteria, but ultimately, it's a gross scene. The utter disgust I felt thinking about Peter trying to detach a sticky web from his wrist while stuck to a fork and a tray is a mere drop in the bucket compared to the close-up that scarred a generation of children. The barbs growing out of Peter's hand. Fun fact, if you watch with captions, it says peeling out for the sound effect if every other body horror sensation wasn't enough for you. Sam Raimi has been successful across so many genres, but he has a talent for making the viewer's skin crawl. Spider-Man throughout time is an action story, a coming-of-age story, and a love story. And Raimi saw the opportunity to use his horror skills to tell the horror stories of real life, along with those brought on when you become a superhero. It's the perfect interpretation of Spider-Man, and all of his touches make it unique and valid on its own in the Spider-Man canon. Thanks for watching, and like and subscribe for more great content.